Hello, 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 hello. Hey, fellas, how y'all doing?
Hey there.
Hey, everybody.
Look, it's Tuesday. Usually we're on like Mondays, but apparently we are just kind of gone with the flow. And whenever we're available once a month, we'll just be on here. Is that how we're doing this now?
I appreciate the flexibility, honestly, because sometimes all days are not created equal. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. I think we all have crazy schedules, like busy lives. Jeremiah's gallivanting across the world, high fashion, having a good time.
Oh, wow.
And speaking of which, we look amazing on the intro. So thank you, Lamont, for doing that. All of us look amazing.
I thank you. I still feel like I agree with Josh. We talked in our group chat. I think we need a photo shoot at some point.
Okay.
I'm all for it.
We'll make it happen. So listen, if you all are watching on YouTube or on Instagram, make sure you say hello to us. I think what really helps us is like if you click like on the video, you say hello, comment, but also go ahead and share the video with some of your friends because today, they always tell you don't talk about religion or politics on a date. Guess what we're doing today? We're talking about religion. No, politics. We're talking about politics. I think we did religion already.
We talked about religion last time.
Last time, right.
Yes.
We always talk about the things we're not supposed to talk about, but
Hell yes.
We like talking about uncomfortable conversations. I think this group, we're okay with that, right? I think so.
But we make it feel so comfortable. That's maybe we need to stir it up a little bit.
Oh.
Well, I'm afraid. I'm afraid, Josh. So listen, we're talking about politics, dating, and gay men. Particularly, we had the DNC, we had the RNC, we have a new, somebody like I call underdog, Kamala Harris coming out running for president, which we thought Joe Biden was gonna just try to make it through. So I think in the last 30 days, so much has changed. Like it's a whirlwind. How do you all feel about all the change that has been going on?
I'm excited and just feel energized. I am a big Joe Biden fan. I love him. I appreciate everything he's done for the country. I was all in till the very, very end, come what may, but this just feels a lot different. And the Republican and Democratic national conventions could not have been more different. They could not have been more contrast.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I think what Josh says is true, and I think for myself, many people in my circle, many of my patients, people were feeling a lot of fear and anxiety with the state of the race. What it was a month ago with Biden in. Just looking at polls, there was not a lot of enthusiasm around his campaign. The momentum was not there in his favor. So I think that switch that we've seen, I think just talking to people, getting the general vibe has been people can breathe a little bit more of a sigh of relief, I think.
Yeah. And, in watching the DNC, I watched both of them. But in true transparency and watching the DNC, I felt really, really inspired. I don't know if anybody else felt like that. The RNC was okay, but it seemed very monotone, even keeled. The DNC was a damn party. Let's be real.
Yeah. Even the DNC, that if you compare and Aaron, they invited a whole bunch of content creators to push out some of their messaging, which I think is so smart because you're trying to reach a younger audience who sometimes are ambivalent about getting out to vote. So I thought that was really one thing I took away from that. Also, apparently Grindr was popping for the RNC, but I would expect it would be popping for DNC, but apparently it was for the RNC. I guess cute little thing. I may throw a little bit of shade throughout the night, but it's all cute. It's in jest. We don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to get canceled, but we are going to share our views and how we feel like it impacts our daily lives. So we're going to be promised to do that, but we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We'll try not to. Okay. All right, so let's get started. I have 2 games I want us to play. Okay, let's get into it. So the first game is, would you date this person? Okay, so I have 2 sets of people, and the video is going to come up. We're going to talk about who the people are, and I want you all to let me know yes or no. Would you date them if you were single? I think Josh might be the only single person here. So Josh, we're going to rely heavily on you to see if this is dating material for you. Okay.
Okay.
Josh. All right. So here are some famous Republican LGBTQ folks. Who do you all recognize here?
Caitlyn Jenner, Peter Thiel, and then I don't know the other 2.
Okay, so you recognize Caitlyn. Who is Caitlyn? Caitlyn, of course, you know, reality TV star, Olympian, prominent Republican. You said you recognize Peter Thiel. He's a co-founder of PayPal.
Yep.
And then there's Ryan Wood, Lady Maga, USA, drag queen, designer. And then also
the one in the middle is Mark Foley, former Republican congressman. I actually met him and I think his husband. I don't know if they're married or not, but I was officiating a wedding actually at Disney a couple years ago, and he and his husband were there in attendance, and we ended up sitting together and at the dinner. Delightful. They were awesome folks. I really enjoyed both of them. His husband's in his late 30s, I think. So he likes them young. But they had, and I think there was a little scandal around his time in Congress about that too. But I mean, I really enjoyed meeting them and talking with them, and he had some really interesting stories to share about his time in Congress too. So that was a really.
I'm sure he can tell a lot. I guess want to make sure I emphasize there are LGBTQ plus folks on both sides of the aisle. Did we say we say that?
Yes. Well, and I can also just say one more thing. I mean, he was telling story. I mean, because he was in Congress when Newt Gingrich was the speaker, and a little bit after that. But that was his main time in Congress, and he really worked his ass off behind the scenes. Went to the mat for the LGBT community before he was really out. I mean, he was the speaker knew that he was, but he went behind the scenes and killed some pretty awful bills. In a way that the general public would never really know that happened. So, I think sometimes, especially now in such a polarized climate that we're in, those stories don't get told in a way that really does happen.
Well, let's be clear. The Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party that it was, 10 years ago, pre-Trump. And the Democratic Party isn't either. I mean, both parties have evolved throughout the history of our country. I've seen it in my own state where I'm from. 20 years ago, my state of West Virginia was a blue state. It was a Democratic state.
Oh, wow.
And the culture shifted there. It's a big coal mining industry that's sort of shifted as well. And now you have a 70-30, Republicans are in power there. So growing up, that would have been unfathomable.
Yeah. Lamont, you don't have my favorite LGBTQ plus person.
Who am I missing? Who am I missing?
We're missing Miss George Santos. What's going on?
I think there was a video of him doing drag, but is he part of our community? Is he officially?
Yeah, he's a big old homo. Yes.
Well, I will add him to this list. Would any of you date him?
No,
absolutely not.
Okay. So no. Okay, so here are some Democratic LGBTQ famous people. Who do you all recognize here?
Pete Buttigieg.
Mayor Pete. Yeah.
Mayor Pete. And
Karen Pierre.
Rachel Levine.
Karen, yeah.
Karen, she's the White House press secretary. I never can remember her name, but yeah.
Yes.
She can get it. She can get it.
Yeah.
And then Rachel Levine is a secretary for health. Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's, like you all said, I think it's important to have, we need to be everywhere so that we can have conversations and make change in this world. So we can't just say all the LGBTQ folks belong on one side because we probably get nothing done. Okay. All right, another game. Are you ready for this game? Number 2 is name this person. Okay, you ready? Who do you all recognize? Come on, look closer.
Mike Pence.
I see Mike Pence in the pink, looking fabulous.
Is that Lindsey Graham?
That is definitely Mother Lindsey Graham.
Mother Lindsey.
That is Lindsey Graham.
I see Rudy Giuliani.
Yes.
Who was the last one?
Is that Tim Scott?
That is Clarence Thomas.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, in an ideal world, that's what things would be like. Okay.
Yeah. You did Clarence wrong, Lamont.
I would be on the beach having a cocktail with him. All right. So yeah, we want to have a conversation about politics, dating. We have some things we're gonna just go back and forth, get people's opinions. If you are watching, we definitely want you all to chime in and let us know if you have some questions. But don't forget to like the video, comment, and share. All right. Let's see. Here's our first question. What key issues are most important to you this cycle? Like this election, they always say, this election is so important. It's life-changing. I think this one really is, though. But like, what is the most important thing that's going on? And how do they intersect with your identities as gay men? Like, I feel like we have to bring our entire selves to this conversation. So what are some things that pop out for you all? I will jump to Aaron first.
Awesome. Put me on the spot.
Of course. Listen, be ready, okay?
I truthfully, and this doesn't necessarily affect me per se, but I'm real curious if certain individuals get elected, two in particular, obviously. I'm real curious in terms of what's going to happen with trans rights. I'm also curious about what's going to happen, particularly with gender neutral bathrooms or gender neutral restrooms. And so I would love for someone to pose that question on September 10th when they come together at this debate.
Yeah, good point. So I think for me, the Supreme Court justice selections, it's really important because
that's true.
If I read correctly, if Trump gets elected, I think 2 justices are planning to retire, right? And then he'll probably put like a 30-year-old judge in there who will be there for the rest of their lives. And I think that has significant implications on previous laws that have been overturned. And if they have a majority and they hold a majority for the next couple, like 20, 30 years, it's going to be nearly impossible to make significant change. So I think, Trump is a machine. Like he's definitely a machine. So the machine behind him, they're so smart. Like they have a plan. They already outlined it online what they want to do. So I feel like if they implement that, it's just going to be so problematic.
Yeah, let me be clear. I mean, I am a liberal, right? I align with a lot of the views, not everything, but there are a lot of issues that I'm very passionate about. Women's rights, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. I have my opinions there. Also, just immigration. I think these are all hot button topics that I have my different opinions on. But for me, this election really is about integrity and kindness, and having someone in office that is not just a kind person who can do the job, who's not there for themselves, who's there for others, who is has a career of being service oriented. And for me, it's just such an easy decision for me personally, that they're so different in who they are as people. that for me, it's not really a hard one. And I'm not really always looking at all the different issues because I don't align with Kamala on everything. And I'm sure we could find some things that Trump would plan that I possibly could support. But for me, it's not really about all the issues as much as it is about getting back to kindness and getting back to integrity of the position itself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I was listening to. I ran for office twice as a Democrat, and I kind of follow politics much like a lot of people follow sports, because it is kind of the way that it's presented, the way it's commentated about, the way that the stats are put up, the whole thing feels very sports-like. And I pay attention to a lot of that. And I think that this election is all about Donald Trump. And whether, there's a future with Donald Trump or a future without Donald Trump. Kamala Harris, who I actually really like and have a lot of respect for. I think we've seen a lot more of who she is as a three-dimensional person over the past, month or so, however long it's been, in a way that we didn't really know that same person before, or at least I'd say the general public didn't have a sense of who that was. But, I hold Trump in utter contempt for everything that he stands for and is about, which is really himself. And the selfishness and the lies and the bullshit and all of it is just offensive to me. And the enablers that go along with it that claim to represent family values, to claim to represent Judeo-Christian values. What a load of bullshit.
Yeah.
What a load of bullshit.
Yeah.
We could not be, they could not have worse and less hospitable rhetoric towards folks that are trying to come to this country to make a better life for themselves and to escape horrors that we can't even speak about. The beating up on trans folks, the name calling, the making fun of people with disabilities, the racism, just it goes on and on and on. And I'm offended by it. And I hold him and all of his enablers in utter contempt. And I think that's what this election is about.
Josh, you over there preaching.
He is. And if I may, Josh, you may know this, you may not know this. When I helped you on your campaign, I was actually a registered Republican. I don't know if you know this.
I did not know that because I might have had something to say about that at the time. I'm just kidding.
Well, we're listening, Aaron. How long were you a registered Republican?
I was a registered Republican in California. So I would say 3 of the 5 years I was there, and then 2 of the many years I've been here back in Atlanta. So yeah, I actually worked for Josh for, passing out flyers and knocking on doors and all that stuff.
Yes, and I appreciate your support. Lamont helped me out as well, hosted a party for me when I ran the second time. So thank you.
Josh, what did you run for? I don't know.
I ran for Georgia State House of Representatives.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, I don't want to gloss over. So you were a registered Republican. Were there particular candidates that you were supporting or policies that you liked and endorsed?
Yeah, I actually loved the business model. And to an extent, and I know we actually talked about this in terms of Christianity, and I was huge. And before I found, I'll be honest with you guys, before I found identity, I really believed in their ability to uphold, specific values that I aligned with. To Josh's point now, not so much. But back then, in 90s, early 2000s, and so on and so forth, I aligned with, the Republican Party.
Yeah. So I'm hearing some of your views have kind of evolved. There's kind of shifted over the years. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. There's another question I wanted to pose, and it's how do you feel like the LGBTQ plus community is represented by the majority of political parties in this election? How are they either being hired, displayed?
Oh gosh, I think it's so different. I mean, you've seen the DNC and the RNC, and you see Kamala's, you know, you were saying earlier about the TikTokers. There was the guy who's like he's like the gay twink who always tries to play straight with his girlfriend, and they like invited him to the DNC. Kamala has been probably the most LGBTQ affirming and positive candidate that we've had in the history of our country. Even more so than Pete Buttigieg. As vice president, she has hosted the pride parties at her pool, where she brings in leaders from the community. I think she would be the most LGBTQ friendly candidate in the history of this country. So I don't see that representation on the other side. It might be there. I just don't see it.
Well, not only that, we're held in contempt by the other side. I mean, that they blame us for the moral, you know, what they perceive as moral failures in our country. It's the same old tired ass story they've been telling since the 70s. You know, since Stonewall, really, it goes back to then. You had a major backlash from the evangelical community after Stonewall riots, after Roe versus Wade was put into law, after the women's rights movements, and in the aftermath of the African-American civil rights movement. You had this major backlash by white evangelicals and Republicans and the Jim Crow people and all those that came together to kind of form this alliance. Sorry, Lamont, you were saying, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I agree with you, but with both of you. And one of the things I'm big on not making people feel like tokens. Like, so just like you just stand up and you represent this community and you're the figurehead, but you have no power. You're not a part of like any of the decision making. But I think if you look at the two different political parties, the major ones, the Democrats actually put people in our community in places of power or an ability to make changes, like Rachel Levine, Secretary of Health. Like, that is not a token position. That is very significant. Press secretary. Pete Buttigieg was the first openly gay man to be in a cabinet.
Yes.
Like, so when you talk about stark differences, Jeremiah, it is very different when it comes to these two different parties. And I'm all about, you know, if you want my vote, I need to be at the damn table and not just on the video.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. We want to know what other people think. If you're in the comment section, let us know what you all think about this conversation. If you want to chime in, we welcome that. Another question we got over here. You know, so we got a little taste of this, you know, during the last cycle. Do you think America would vote for a gay candidate for president? You know, do you think that will ever happen?
I don't believe. I think there would obviously be some votes there, but I don't believe that America is as progressive as we would like to think. And I'll explain why, particularly. So we know that in 2020, the last election, that 70 plus, even though he lost, former President Trump had 70 plus million votes. And we recognize that those people are the people who are voting for their common interests. Common interests are, hey, listen, I'm voting for family. I'm voting for what, you know, we believe to be Christian values, although I don't know how true that is. They're voting for big business. They're voting for all of those things. I don't think that at this point, they really and truthfully believe that America is actually ready for this type of progressiveness. Yeah.
What if he was a Republican? What if he or she or they, them, there were Republican?
I don't believe. I don't think. Because I think it goes against what they claim to believe, what a lot of Republicans claim to believe. That's just my personal opinion.
I don't think that. I mean, again, having spent quite a bit of time sort of looking at elections and reading all this stuff, I think that there's a lot of one issue voters that make up the Republican Party specifically, and Democratic Party for that matter. That you've got the anti-abortion people, that is their only issue. That is the only, they don't give a shit about anything else. If that's what they want to hear, is a total ban on abortion, and forget the rest. And then there's others that are voting for Trump. They don't care that he's a Democrat or Republican, or they don't care what party he is. They're voting for Trump because he represents some kind of machismo-ness, the get tough on, foreigners or whatever it is that they see in him, that irreverent sort of, giving the middle finger to everybody kind of attitude that resonates with some folks that really aren't typical voters. They don't typically vote in other, these are folks that haven't really voted much until Trump came along.
Sure.
So I don't know if we can really ascertain, kind of how that might go. Now, I will say that I think that part of the reason that Kamala Harris is doing as well as she did is because she's running against Trump. I don't know if there was a Nikki Haley or George Bush or somebody like that on the Republic, like a white guy that was not crazy on the other side. I don't know if she'd be doing as well as she's doing. I could be wrong about that. But I'm glad that she had a chance to kind of really shine and when her whole family got up on the stage at the very end of her speech, it was America. There was white people, there was Indian people, there was black folks, there was Latin folks, there was children, there was older folks. It was everybody was on that stage in her family. Yeah. And anyway, that gets away, I think, from the question that was asked. But I think it just depends on the circumstances and who's running and what the issues are that happen to be on the radar at that time.
I think you're onto something, Josh, in the sense that you were talking earlier that politics reminds you a lot of sports, and I completely agree. So in this scenario, you're marching down the field, your quarterback, Joe Biden, has an injury, and he's not performing well, and you just know that your team is going to lose the game. And all of a sudden, the rookie gets tagged in to take over, and she throws a Hail Mary and scores a touchdown her first play of the game. That's exciting. That's something to get behind, and I think that's a sort of a metaphor for her campaign, is that she has been an underdog. She was not expected to be there. Joe Biden, we thought, was going to be the guy that led us down the field, and ultimately might have been a tight race, but we'd have probably lost. And so you have this new breath of fresh air, and that in Kamala Harris, and I think so many people have been re-energized by that.
Yeah, I love this analogy. Yes, it is definitely an underdog.
Sports ball.
I feel so athletic.
For all you Georgia and Alabama fans, what Jeremiah just stated was the exact same thing that happened when Jalen Hurts got injured. Came in, threw a touchdown. The rest is history.
Yeah.
So to that point, Jeremiah, someone on Instagram is saying a president would have to come out of the closet while they're in office. So they would have to give their parents that they're either asexual or heterosexual, and then maybe the second year or third year come out of the closet and say, hey, by the way, I'm part of the community.
I would venture to say that we've had a gay president.
They said Lincoln was, he used to sleep in the bed with his, back in the day.
They said that when their 15th president, Buchanan was a bachelor president. He had his niece who lived in the White House with him, and she served as first lady role. So it's possible that we've maybe had a gay or bisexual candidate in office before.
I'm sure at least a bisexual, at least, yeah. Okay. Another question we got here. Let's see. What are some concerns do you have for the LGBTQ population if Donald Trump wins the presidency again? Like, what are some concerns that you all can think of?
Yeah.
I can chime in. So, I wear a lot of different hats. I do dating coaching, matchmaking, but also my 9 to 5, I work for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So I work for the federal government, and a lot of my work is focused on public health and achieving health equity. And there is a huge difference that I've experienced for the last 12 plus years working for the federal government under different administrations. And under a Trump administration, the types of social services, funds, policies, initiatives were reduced greatly. Like it was more challenging to do HIV prevention work, to do health equity work, because they would just say, hey, we are not supporting that. That budget is cut. Or we're going to move towards more of a religious focus, that we want to have people focus on that instead of like the, you know, prevention services that are needed. So I think for me, it's concerning because I don't want us to go backwards. I want us to always follow what the science and the data say is effective to reduce disparities, and not just because you feel a certain way, you enact a policy that impacts millions of people's lives.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Working in HIV medicine and treatment and prevention, we've seen what they have done and what they're trying to do to contraception and women's right to choose. And we've seen the receipts of how the Supreme Court have directly impacted people's lives. You know, and so as a gay man, as a gay healthcare provider, I can't help but think, how will this impact me and my patients? Will there be a ban on HIV prevention medication because that's just not ethical to them? Will that promote promiscuity? Will the funding for PrEP be cut? Will funding for HIV treatment be cut? So these are real concerns. It's not, you know, hyperbole to think that couldn't be put up before the Supreme Court.
Jeremiah, do you remember there was a ban on people who were living with HIV to travel into the country?
I don't recall that particularly.
For a limited time, and under a Republican administration, they were trying to prevent people who were living with HIV coming into the United States. And I'm just like, it's just like piss poor policies like that. But just like, I
mean, that's what you would expect in countries like Saudi Arabia. And, you know, I had an acquaintance who lived in United Arab Emirates in Dubai and got diagnosed with HIV on a random test and had to literally move out of the country. He was no longer welcome there because there's no HIV in that country. And that's, you know, obviously not true, but that is, you know, I might be being anxious about it, but to me, that feels like some of the rhetoric that I hear on the other side is that they're coming for women's rights. They're coming for LGBTQ rights. And I think we have a right to be concerned, because I think if any of these issues were put up in the Supreme Court today, there's a 6-3 conservative, and they pretty much have voted along party lines. They're no longer, you know, impartial. To me, at least, that's how I feel.
Yeah,
agreed. I mean, and let's think about, to your point, Jeremiah. Let's think about one of the, I guess, the most glaring issue. Which is, absolutely, you know, gay marriage. And so if we think about the overturning of Roe v. Wade, do we feel like, because they are typically staunch in their belief system, Christian family values, that gay marriage is something that is going to be overturned?
100%. I don't think it's even something that takes a genius to figure out. Like, that's definitely, I mean, and here's the thing, even with the Kamala as president, that can still happen. Supreme Court. So I think it's so important to understand the repercussions of another Trump presidency, right? I'm still bitter that they blocked Obama's pick at the end of his presidency. He had, more than a year left?
Yeah.
Who was the guy, Gorsuch?
No, Merrick Garland.
Merrick Garland, okay.
But yeah, they put in, I guess it was it? I can't remember who it was. It was either.
I think it was the.
It was
Brett Kavanaugh, wasn't it?
Yeah, because he chose Sotomayor and Kavanaugh, didn't he? Am I wrong?
Who are we talking about here? Who Obama put on the court?
Yeah.
Obama put Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor on the court.
Okay.
And then Trump put Coney Barry, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch on the court.
Gorsuch, okay, that's right. He did Gorsuch, not Garrett Marlin. Yeah.
Let's see. I want to address the question, Lamont, that you put out, and I see we got a couple comments we certainly want to include. The thing, in addition, amen to everything that y'all said. The thing I think that I am concerned about is, the rhetoric that Donald Trump uses, that then all the other enablers kind of get on board with and start also using, increases bullying in schools. It increases the violence that we see, just one country person, one American towards another, just really turning our guns and our insults and our violence and our negativity on each other. And it just gives permission to say these things that are just awful and intended to be hurtful. That's one of the main things that I'm concerned about, because, words, of course, matter. Certainly the president's words matter. And marginalized communities are the ones that are hurt when that kind of rhetoric is spoken, and especially the most vulnerable of us, children, immigrants, people that English is a second language for, people with disabilities, those are the folks that suffer the most under this kind of rhetoric and political climate. And so that's one of the things, and that of course has tentacles into all kinds of policy, all kinds of stuff, but just the way that he speaks to people is just intended to be mean and belittling and intended to incite violence, quite frankly. We saw that on January the 6th. Nobody with a pair of eyes that can see and some ears that can hear can look at that information and walk away with a different conclusion other than those folks were sent there to cause violence.
Yeah.
And the acrobatics and Cirque du Soleil that the other side does around that to try to mansplain it away is just silly at best.
Well, they said initially that it was Antifa. Remember? I don't know if you recall.
It was. That's what they said.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
And the thing that's so frustrating is when you present facts, it's not whether it's science, whether it's evidence that, okay, that wasn't Antifa, that was actually someone who has a long history of being a MAGA Trump supporter. Even when people are presented with that evidence, no longer can they say, oh, okay, I was wrong. No, they dig their heels in deeper and they come up with some crazy conspiracy theory that further validates their original position. I've never seen anything like it. And from a psychological, you guys can talk more about this, but it's almost like a syndrome, or when they talk about Munchausen's and things like that. I've never seen anything like it.
It's a cult. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of political analysts, some of them quite liberal, will compare supporters for Donald Trump to cultism. Jim Jones and Koresh and whomever else, Manson, all of those folks.
Yeah, and I had to block someone in the comment section.
Yes, I was in the middle of reading that comment when you.
I deleted the comment and banned the person who said we need help, we need therapy because we're gay, right?
Yeah,
so
I'm a therapist, happy to help. But getting back to, I guess, what somebody said, it has become an identity at this point. And so when you speak against Trump, you're speaking against the identity that they've taken on as a Trump supporter, the kind of person that they envision that is. Much the same way that when he is brought up in court on charges, he portrays it as, I'm drawing the fire away from you. I mean, they're coming for me. Imagine what they'll do for you. And having nothing to do, obviously, with the facts, but portraying himself as some kind of messianic, martyr, and so it is a sense of identity, and that makes it much more difficult to reason with folks and to be able to put facts out there, because we're not even talking about the facts. We're talking about a sense of identity.
Yeah. And I think when you talk about identity, I'm always of the thinking, the mindset that we should embrace each other's differences. And I feel like what he gives is there's a certain type of American, And if you don't fit into that box, then you just don't have a space. I think you can see that in who he elects to like work in his office, who represents. Even this conversation that pisses me off over and over again when someone says someone's a DEI hire.
Yeah,
you might as well just say the M word to me. Just say it. I'd be like, I can stomach that but better than I can. You saying this person is a DEI hire or mayor, and it speaks to like this sense of if you're not a white heterosexual man with some money, then it's kind of like this is not your America. But I feel like our country is diverse and we should support everybody.
Josh, you hit on this earlier. I just wanted to kind of come back to this and talk about the biggest scam in American political history, that someone like Donald Trump, who just the other day was quoted saying, have you ever asked for forgiveness, I think? And he said something along the lines of, I've never done that. And that is literally the bedrock of being a Christian. From the way I was taught to be a Christian, you have to ask for forgiveness of your sins, and that's what Jesus died for. But somehow this man has aligned himself very successfully with evangelicals. And when
he's not a Christian.
Well, when you ask his favorite book in the Bible, he said there are many. I like a lot of them. They said, well, do you like the New Testament or the Old Testament? And he said they're about the same. So this is a man who clearly doesn't know much about the Bible, and that's okay. I don't necessarily need to vote for someone who has a certain religious affiliation, but he's a scammer to the American people who somehow buy and look you straight in the face and say, he's a Christian. That to me is insulting as well.
Josh made a good point earlier, and I'm not playing devil's advocate, guys, but I just wonder this. Do we recognize that Donald Trump says the things that we all sometimes have thought or people are wanting to say and they can't say it? So he's the elected person, or he's the look-to person to be able to say some of the things that they've wanted to say, or maybe even we've wanted to say.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really what he's tapped into, is giving people permission to be xenophobic and racist and homophobic, and he's doing it so they can too. And there's a question in the comments about which speech should you enjoy most, and one of the things, I didn't get to watch the full DNC. I only caught comments, but I just want to bring this back to your question. Was I really enjoyed the Republicans who they brought in. The lieutenant governor from Georgia, was it Stephanie Grisham, who literally said that Trump told her, and I'm just paraphrasing, Stephanie, if you say things that aren't true, if you say them enough times, people will believe you. I'll leave it at
that. Thank you, Jeremiah. Aaron, I think Trump speaks, he's the voice of the ignorant. He's he's the voice of the uneducated. He's the voice of the people who want to continue to divide us. Like when you talk about Jeremiah, if you keep saying a lie over and over again, then people will believe you. I feel like that's his voice. I think people want to say racist things, so he says them and he gives them a platform. And for me, that translates into policies. That translates into law. So if you can just be so free at the mouth to, intentionally mispronounce a Black woman's name when people of color have had to change their names so people can communicate with them, you take away their identity, their heritage, their culture. So more than just you don't want to learn her name, that's racist. It's literally. And it just translates into just higher things that will change our country overall. Yeah. I loved Warnock's speech at the DNC. Warnock talked about, if your neighbor is sick, I'm concerned about it. If my neighbor is sick, because that's going to impact my family. So I feel like we have a community that we need to make sure that we are all taken care of. And I just thought his Warnock was my favorite speech. I felt like it was more inspiring.
I got to give it to Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Yeah. Did anybody see? So obviously, I'm sure we all saw her sister's speech. Her sister's speech was really on point.
Mm-hmm.
And did anybody think that lady is 57 years old? Can you believe?
Whose sister? Are you talking about Kamala's sister?
Kamala's sister is 57 years old.
I didn't see the speech.
And she's 59 though, right?
Yeah, Kamala's 59.
Kamala's 59, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And Tim Walz is 59 or 60.
He looks a little older.
He does say, if you were a teacher, you would look older as well.
There's a question from DMV Dre says, from a gay man's perspective, what do you gentlemen think about the abortion ban, especially given that gay men are a large contributor to adoptions and foster care? What do y'all,
abortion bans are attempts to control people's bodies, much the same way that the same forces have attempted to control gay bodies by outlawing gay sex, outlawing the ways that we can congregate or how we present ourselves with these anti-drag laws that we've seen. It's the same energy that's behind all of this. And I believe in freedom myself. I don't know about y'all, but there are all kinds of circumstances that are really none of our business that go into how people, make decisions about their bodies. And I don't think that has to take anything away from LGBTQ folks that adopt or foster. I don't even necessarily want to put those two things in the same category because I think they're completely different. Which is not a knock to you, DMVJ. It's just that they don't. We're talking about two separate issues in my view here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's another question I wanted to keep us moving along because we're talking about it's gay men, relationships, love. Do you feel like you could date or marry someone of a different political affiliation? Like, do you feel like your partner has to agree with you on everything political, or
How is this one?
Yeah.
So I think 10 years ago, I would have said, sure, I could date someone who's a different political affiliation. We're not that too far apart. We respect each other. We can have a civil conversation. You're supporting a candidate whom I may not agree with, but they're still a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Today, I could not date someone who was putting their support behind Donald Trump. To me, it's indicative of the kind of person they are and their values. And it's so far removed from who I am as a person and my core values, I could not date that person. Yeah. And I wonder, I know people here in Atlanta where there's one is this, one's that. And I literally wonder how they make it because I couldn't do it.
I just feel like I would come home cussing mad. Like I feel like my husband, we don't agree on everything politically. Like there are some things I'm like, really? And I'm like, can we go sit down? Like I have to educate him on things. Or are there times where he's like, no, Lamont, you need to read this. Like this is what's going on. So I think we have a healthy debate about political different things that we may disagree on. But if there was someone who was voting or supporting, donating a candidate that wants to change my life significantly, I would be like, bro, you got to go. Like, we can't do this. Mm-hmm. Can we be friends and colleagues? Sure, we can have a conversation, but I couldn't marry or be in a relationship. Yeah.
Well, and I question how deep I could really go in a friendship as well. I mean, I can talk to anybody. I can be friendly and cordial. I can, and even in my therapy practice, maybe after seeing this episode, they might quit me, but I have some Republicans that I see, as some of my clients, but I question my ability to go deep with folks that are in the current, because there's either a certain level of ignorance there or a certain level of willful meanness in my view, and I can't have that in my circle. I just can't have that.
From a professional standpoint, let me just be clear. I think I speak for all of us. If you're someone in my office. I am going to treat you with utmost respect and give you the same level of care and treatment that I give to any patient, regardless. I don't even know your political affiliation. It doesn't matter to me. But on a personal level, because I am so passionate about certain things, I would find it more difficult to have that outside of the professional setting.
Yeah,
I want to make this distinction to all of your points. So I have a friend and have had a friend for many years, as a matter of fact, who is a staunch Republican. And what's interesting is I recognize, to Josh's point, I cannot be my authentic self with this person. I can't, because there's a barrier for me to express who I am as an individual when that person is saying, well, I'm voting for, and let's say Trump, I'm voting for Trump for these particular reasons, yet they don't. And this person is a Caucasian male, and he's gay, who dates Black men. And I know that I can't necessarily align with, some of the things that he's saying. Similarly, I have tried it. I have tried to date a Republican, a staunch Republican, and it didn't work. It can't work. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
So when I say that, I mean, when this question comes up, I have tried, but it doesn't work to all of your points.
Yeah.
Is that back when you were registered as a Republican also? Just kidding.
There are studies. Go ahead, Lamont. Sorry.
I was gonna say, one of the things, as I do dating coaching, and I talk to a lot of men who want to date outside of their race, right? Whether it's white men or Black men who want to cross over. My thing is, how are you connected to the community?
Yes.
Do you vote in the other, in our interest? So if it's a white man trying to date a Black man, it's like, okay, well, do you come to the picnic? Do you know Black history? Do you have Black friends? Do you vote in the interest of Black men? Same thing for Black men who want to date white men. Like, because to me, if there's so many core values that are different, it's like, well, what are you aligned on other than sex? Is it a fetish, or do you see the person as an authentic, whole, multi-dimensional person? Like I have those questions. Yeah.
There's a book. I cannot think of the name of it. I'll have to get it for you guys. But it basically talks about how our political ideology, we're not just born into it because of our environment, but there's a genetic component to it, right? Meaning that if someone who's liberal, they tend to like brighter colors, their desks tend to be a little bit more just unorganized. They like spicier foods. They're willing to try sushi. Whereas someone who is conservative has, they like duller colors. They won't eat spicy foods. So there's a lot more things that they've sort of identified as characteristics of someone who's conservative and liberal that transcends just political ideology. So I thought it was very interesting to think, not only do we have these core differences in our political narratives, but, you're not willing to go out to eat with me and try the spicy food down the street because you're conservative. You're not willing to go out of your comfort zone as much.
Yeah, and Jeremiah, to that point, to that end, that's a really good point. We could also make the point that some conservatives, let's even say most conservatives, possibly still in the closet. And with that, how is that going to affect us dating? How is that going to affect, me showing you off on, whatever medium I want to show you off on?
Yeah.
I think for a lot of gay Republicans, when push comes to shove, and this is not the case for all of them, but a lot of it comes down to money, and they think they will have better tax benefits if they vote Republican, and they're willing to forego everything else because their bottom line. That's the sad truth.
Woo! This is another question somebody put. What do you say to straight Black people who say that Black rights are before gay rights?
I think it's a false choice.
I am Black and gay at the same damn time.
Why do we have to choose one? Why can't we, everybody have a piece of the pie?
Watch Rustin. And there's a speech that the amazing Coleman Domingo says towards kind of the middle of the movie, and he talks about both of those things. So I think both of those things are highly a component of who we are, of our identity.
Yeah. There's another question that I'll put up, and this will kind of round us out because we've been talking for a lot tonight. So would you change your affiliation for someone, like for love? Say if, your potential partner or your current partner said, "Oh, I want to run for office, and it's going to be with a different, affiliation." And they're like, "Hey, I need you to actually get behind this and support me, help me raise funds for this publicly." Could you do it? Could you do it, gentlemen?
Well, I think about Kelly Conway and her husband, right? They're obviously different affiliations. I couldn't do it, Lamont. I really couldn't.
They got divorced, by the way.
I'm so behind. Okay.
And they were both Republicans. It's just that she drank the Trump Kool-Aid and he stayed a little bit more, or it stayed.
When did they get divorced?
Recently, it's been within the past year or two, I think. But,
oh, thank God, because she's terrible.
It's like her second or third. I don't know. Second. Yeah. So Jeremiah, no. You say no. Josh,
that's a firm no for me. It's not just like asking somebody to switch their paint color or something. I mean, this is not asking somebody to become, to go from being a Atlanta Braves fan to a LA Dodgers fan. This is, we're talking about a worldview. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about, how one, it's a lot. That would be too much to ask for me. And if somebody were to ask me that, they wouldn't really know me. They wouldn't, like that would,
yeah. Because I would be like, have we met? Like, we've been screwing this whole time. We've been going on dates. You've met the family. Like, do you not know who the core of who I am, my mission, my purpose in life? Like, apparently you have been asleep the entire time and not paying attention. Yeah, I have to introduce myself.
Another way to look at this question is, would your love for someone grow deeper if you realize that you shared the same affiliation and views? And I can speak to that. Like, my partner and I, that's one thing we are so aligned on. We've brought out the best in each other when it comes to, being a better person. And for us, a lot of that, both of us were raised in very Christian homes, he in Mormon family, me in a Pentecostal family. But the core values that we learned were to be and do good in the world. Help your neighbor. Do not judge. All of these things that we are as people that we no longer, necessarily subscribe to the religion, but who we are, the core value of who we are, is what helps us align with our political affiliation. And for me, that is someone, I'm so liberal, I'd say that I'm socialist. Like, I would love to have universal health care for everyone. I hate seeing my patients lose their HIV medication because they no longer have insurance because of a job loss. I hate seeing my patients who are on HIV medicine lose their care because they're moving to another state and it's going to take 3 months for their insurance to kick in. We can do better. We have the resources. This is a country and a world where not one person, only one person can succeed. We all can share in the resources,
Yeah. Agreed. It goes against the very fabric of my being to want to change my identity. As I mentioned to you, I'm getting you back, Josh. As I mentioned to everybody, once I realized who I was, I changed for me, not for anyone else. And why the hell would I actually go back or go to something that inhibits who I really am? It inhibits, to your point, Jeremiah, the freedom that I now have to be who I am and to vote for whoever I want to vote for, and vice versa.
Yeah. And if there's a comment that goes to that point, Aaron, someone said, what about those of us who are independent because they agree or disagree with both sides of the aisle. I think people are open to you being, well, I'm saying myself. I could date someone who's an independent, who critically looks at each candidate, at their policies, and critiques them. But my thing at the end of the day, once you look at that policy, I want you to understand how that policy is going to impact my life. And if you're voting for someone who wants to take away my rights, then I'm going to question your commitment or your true understanding of who I am. Yeah.
I would take it a step further, Lamont, and say if someone told me they're not voting or they're undecided, that would be a deal breaker for me.
I feel like everybody should vote, and every I'm not gonna start cussing, but every vote counts. Like, I go to barbershop and people are like, "Oh, I'm not voting." I'm like, "Bruh, so you are literally throwing your vote away and you're letting the other side win." I think my ancestors were murdered and killed because they wanted the right to vote. So for Black people, I'm like, "No, bruh, we going to go vote." Like, let's get educated, but I need you to vote. Like, I need you to vote.
And it tells you something about the difference again in the parties when one party is trying everything they can to strip people away from their right to vote.
Yeah.
Right? When they're throwing people off the voting rolls, when they're making it harder for you to have a driver's license to show up, where there's a lot of privilege in that. If you've lost your ID or you're living here and maybe you don't have transportation to go to the DMV to have an ID or to pay the $50 fee to have the license or identification. All these laws that are focused at getting people off the rows of the voter rolls or preventing people to vote, and you look at which party's doing that, it should tell you a lot about the party's values.
Yeah,
and not only just
your voice,
and also just being jerks about it too. I mean, the election board here in Georgia just passed some ridiculous thing that makes everybody put signs up in the polling places that says U.S. citizens only. Yes. Well, any idiot that you have to be registered to vote, first of all. In order to get through the registration process, you have to provide all those documents to even get registered. So all that has already been taken care of. It's just these people on this board who also happen to be Trump MAGA supporters are just being assholes and just trying to be inhospitable and mean. That's that mean thing again. That just it's unnecessary meanness.
Do you guys recall the last election? I think it was when Stacey Abrams was running for governor. Mm-hmm. A lot of the inner city polling places were having record turnout. It was taking hours upon hours to vote. So what a lot of and I knew a girl, a trans activist here in town, who was part of the team who was handing out bags of chips and water to people waiting in line. They were nonpartisan, but because they were doing it at these inner city, in Atlanta, these voting places that probably were predominantly Democrat, they made it illegal to do that. Yeah. To hand out water was illegal.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Josh, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't cut you off.
No. I was giving an expletive laden rant there, so thank you for cutting me off.
But no, Jeremiah, your point needed a good pause because I think it says so much that giving water out to people waiting in line to vote is no longer allowed. What? Like, what? Yeah. So, great conversation. I think takeaway is that I would say takeaway from this conversation is get educated on the different issues. It's 2024. You can Google, you can ask ChatGPT like questions, like it'll give you the information that you need on different policies and laws that both parties want to enact and how it will change your life. And, as you're dating someone, I think you should ask them some of these questions to see if you're aligned. But overall, I think people need to vote. Get out and vote. Yeah,
absolutely. It is your given right to vote.
Yes. And, I guess when I throw this one up again, because I guess absolutely love this image. So I feel like our world would be a better place if we all just, got immersed. Yes.
If you zoom in, put the picture back up of Clarence. If you zoom in behind Clarence Thomas, I think you can see Jenny Thomas on her cell phone texting Mark Meadows.
Ooh. and Lamont, you also didn't bring in one of our favorite persons, Miss Candace Owens.
Oh. Can we end here, please?
Is she part of our community?
Oh.
Is she?
She's not. She's
not. Okay. She's not. Look. Okay. Listen. Good night. Thank you all so much. Don't forget, you all share this video, give us some comments, let us know what you think about our topic, and we'll see you all next month. We'll have a great topic for you all. Good night.
Good night.
Yes.
Thanks.